It was just after 3 in the morning when my phone lit up the whole ceiling. I remember staring at it for a second before I even reached for it. My bedroom was that specific kind of dark, where you can't tell if your eyes are open or closed, and I'd been asleep maybe 2 hours. The glow from the screen felt almost violent. The name on the display was my next-door neighbor. She'd lived in the house to my left for about 4 years. We weren't close. Close enough to wave, close enough to drag each other's bins back from the curb, close enough that I had her number saved and she had mine. That was the extent of it. So seeing her name at 3 in the morning, my stomach dropped before I even answered. I picked up. She didn't say hello. She didn't say anything for almost 2 full seconds, and I could hear her breathing, shallow and fast, like she'd been running. Then she whispered, "Don't turn your porch light on. Whatever you do, don't." I sat up. What? What's going on? She hung up. I sat there in the dark with the phone in my hand and that specific kind of silence that follows something that doesn't make sense. My first thought was that she dialed me by accident. My second thought was that she was drunk. My third thought, the one that crawled up slowly from somewhere I don't like to visit, was that she'd meant every word. I did not turn on my porch light. I didn't turn on any light at all. I just sat there in the middle of my bed with my knees pulled up and my phone dimming back to black in my hand, listening to the house. The refrigerator hum. A car somewhere far away. The soft tick of the baseboard heating cycling off. I'm 38 years old. I bought my house alone, which I say not to brag, but because it matters. I've lived alone for 6 years, and I've learned not to be afraid of dark houses or strange sounds. I know which floorboards creak. I know what the pipes sound like when it gets below freezing. I know every noise this house makes. And right then, I heard one I didn't recognize. It wasn't loud. That's what made it worse. It was a soft, slow drag, like something being moved across the wooden planks of my front porch. Deliberate. Patient. I stopped breathing. The sound stopped too. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. Nothing. I exhaled and told myself it was a branch. There was wind that night, not a lot, but some. It was October, mid-month, and the oak tree in my front yard still had most of its leaves. Branches scrape things. That's what branches do. I almost believed myself. Then my phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor. "He knows you're home. Don't make a sound. I'm calling from my sister's phone. Mine is gone." I read it 3 times. I read it until the words started to feel like shapes instead of meaning. Then I typed back, "Who is he? What is happening?" She didn't respond right away. I sat there watching the 3 dots appear and disappear, like she kept starting to type and then stopping herself. Finally, my husband. We had a fight. He left, but I think he came back. I saw him go toward your house. Everything sort of rearranged itself in my mind. I'd met her husband maybe a handful of times. He seemed quiet. Not the warm kind of quiet. The tight-lipped kind. She'd mentioned once, standing at the mailbox on a summer afternoon, that things had been hard lately. She hadn't elaborated, and I hadn't pushed. I wished, sitting there in the dark, that I had. I typed back, "Are you safe right now?" "I'm at my sister's. I left when he started. I'm safe." But I saw him on the camera, my doorbell cam, walking toward your yard. He was carrying something. My mouth went dry. I looked at my bedroom window. The curtains were closed. I always sleep with the curtains closed. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like that was something someone had planned for me, something I should be grateful for without knowing why. I texted her back, "I'm calling 911. Please," she wrote, "please do." I switched over and dialed. The dispatcher answered on the second ring, calm and even, and I gave her my address in a whisper, so low I wasn't sure she'd heard me. She asked me to confirm it, and I did. She asked if I could see anyone, and I said no. She asked if my doors were locked, and I didn't know. I'd come home from work that evening, made dinner, watched something on my laptop, gone to bed. I lock my front door every night without thinking. But my back door, the one off the kitchen that leads to the small concrete patio, I never use after September. The dispatcher was still talking. I was not fully listening. "Ma'am, are you still with me?" "My back door?" I said. "I need to check my back door." I said. "I need to check my back door." "I need you to stay where you are. Officers are 4 minutes out." 4 minutes. I want to tell you that 4 minutes is nothing. That 4 minutes goes by in a song, in a commercial break, in the time it takes to heat up leftovers. I know that, but I also want to tell you that 4 minutes in a dark house with something wrong happening outside, 4 minutes has a completely different texture. It stretches. It gets thick. You notice things in 4 minutes that you would never otherwise notice. The exact pitch of the wind, the particular quality of light coming under the curtain's edge, the way your own heartbeat sounds when the house is completely quiet. I stayed on with the dispatcher. I did not check the back door. I pulled my knees tighter to my chest, and I kept my phone against my ear, and I waited. At some point, I couldn't tell you exactly when, I became aware of a new sound. Not from outside. From inside. Downstairs. It was faint. A creak. Low and slow, like weight settling onto a floorboard. I know my floors. I know every voice they have. And the one I was hearing right then was the one the kitchen makes when someone is standing near the island, shifting their weight from one foot to the other. "Someone is inside my house," I whispered into the phone. "I think someone is already inside." I heard the dispatcher relay that. I heard her voice change, sharpen. "Officers are 2 minutes away, ma'am. I need you to lock your bedroom door right now if you can do so quietly." My bedroom door doesn't have a lock. It's an old house. None of the interior doors have locks except the bathroom. When I moved in, I thought that was charming. I stood up slowly. I crossed to the door in bare feet, making no sound, and I pressed my back against the wall beside it, instead of in front of it, because if someone came through that door, I didn't want to be standing directly in the frame. I held the phone with both hands. I heard the stairs. Not all of them, just 2. The 3rd step from the bottom and the 7th. The ones that always announce themselves. I'd told a friend about those stairs once, laughed about it, said I'd never be able to sneak in after a late night. 1 step. Then a pause. Then the 2nd. Then nothing. I could not hear anything beyond the blood in my ears. Then, from somewhere below the window, from the front of the house, I heard sirens. Still a little distant, but real, undeniable. The sound cutting through the October air like something cold and bright. And whatever was happening in my hallway heard them too. Fast footsteps. Back down the stairs. Through the kitchen. I could track the sounds. I knew every room. The back door. A bang like it hit the exterior wall. Then nothing but the sirens getting closer. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor with my back against it and my legs out in front of me, and I just breathed. The police arrived 90 seconds later. I know because I counted. I let them in the front door in my socks and an old t-shirt, and I stood in my entryway while 2 officers moved through the house with flashlights sweeping into every corner, every closet, the basement I'd forgotten to even think about. They found him 3 blocks away. He'd cut across 2 yards after leaving through my back door, and a neighbor, someone I'd never spoken to, a man walking his dog at an absurd hour, had seen him climbing a fence and called it in separately. They had 2 reports on the same person within minutes of each other. They found him sitting on the steps of a closed laundromat, still holding the thing he'd been carrying, a short aluminum bat, the kind used for softball. I'm going to sit with that detail for a moment, because I think it deserves one. He'd brought something with him. He hadn't come over to talk. The officer who spoke with me, a young woman, probably late 20s, patient and thorough, told me that he'd likely come in through the back door, which the crime scene unit confirmed had been unlocked. I hadn't locked it. She wasn't unkind about it. She said it happens more than people think, especially with doors people don't use regularly. She gave me a card and told me someone would follow up in the morning. After they left, I stood in my kitchen alone and looked at the back door for a long time. It's a regular door, white painted wood with a small square window in the top half. 6 years I'd lived here and I'd never once thought about whether I'd locked that door before bed. I didn't have a habit for it the way I had a habit for the front. There was no routine, no check, no second thought. I went through the whole house. I turned on every light. I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of water and I called my neighbor back on her sister's number, and she answered before the first ring had finished. "Are you okay?" Her voice was raw. "I'm okay," I told her. "They got him." She made a sound I don't have a word for. Part exhale, part sob, like she'd been holding her breath since she'd sent that text. We talked for a while. She told me she'd seen him on the doorbell camera, seen him looking at my house from her driveway, seen him go toward my backyard. She'd grabbed her keys and driven to her sister's less than 2 miles away. She'd been sitting in her sister's kitchen the whole time, watching the camera on her phone, watching the police cars pull up to my curb. "I should have said more when I called," she said. I panicked. I didn't know what to say except, "Don't turn on the light," because I didn't want him to know you were awake. "You did the right thing," I told her. "You called me. You warned me. I should have called the police myself, right then." "So should I said. "We both should have." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I've known for a while that it was getting worse. I just kept thinking it would get better." I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't. There's no good answer. There's just the long, complicated truth of what it's like to be inside something when you can't see its shape from the outside. She stayed at her sister's for almost 2 weeks. She filed for an order of protection 3 days after that night. Her husband was charged: criminal trespass, breaking and entering, possession of a dangerous weapon. Whether it goes further, whether it sticks, I don't know yet. The legal system moves on its own clock, and I've learned not to hold my breath. What I know is this. The morning after, I went to the hardware store before 8 o'clock and I bought a door alarm for every exterior door in my house. I bought a lock for the back door that required a key from both sides. I bought a small camera that clips above the front and back entrances, the kind you can check from your phone at any hour. I spent $240 and I installed everything myself by noon. I know that none of that would have stopped that night from happening if my neighbor hadn't called me. I know that the door alarm would have gone off when he came through the back, but by then he would have already been inside. I know there are limits to what deadbolts and cameras and dollar amounts can protect you from. But here's what I keep coming back to. She called. She was terrified and running out her own front door to her car in the middle of the night, and she still stopped long enough to call me, to give me 11 seconds of warning in a whisper. She didn't know if it would be enough. She didn't know if I'd take it seriously. She did it anyway. I think about what those 11 seconds were worth. I think about how the entire shape of that night turned on a phone call I almost didn't take seriously. I think about how close I came to rolling over, going back to sleep, deciding it was a wrong number or a sleepwalking mistake. I almost did. I almost put the phone face down and pulled the blanket back up. I didn't. And I don't know why, exactly. Some instinct, some small hitch in her voice that got through even half asleep. But I didn't. I've lived in this neighborhood for 6 years. I know my front door habits and my floorboard voices and the way the oak tree sounds in the wind. I thought I knew how to be safe in my own house. What I didn't know was that safety isn't a thing you build once and then have. It's something you tend. It's checking the back door. It's answering the phone at 3 in the morning even when you're exhausted. It's knowing which neighbors you'd call in an emergency and making sure they know they can call you. The week after everything happened, I brought a casserole to my neighbor's sister's house. I didn't know what else to do. My neighbor came to the door and we stood on the front step, and she cried a little and I did too. And it wasn't the kind of crying that feels bad. It felt like something releasing, like pressure that had been building for longer than one night. I still live in the same house. I'm not going anywhere. I love my street, my oak tree, My creaking third step. I love the way the light comes through the front windows in the late afternoon in a way that's worth everything inconvenient about an old house. But every night now, before I go to bed, I do one thing differently. I walk to the back door, I check the handle, I lock it, and then I go to sleep. If you're listening to this right now, thinking about that one door you never check, that one entrance you leave to habit or assumption, or just the good luck of never having needed to think about it, I want you to go check it. Not tomorrow, tonight. I'm only here to tell you this because someone who barely knew me cared enough to make a phone call. Not everyone gets that. Go check your door. I've thought a lot about the word almost since that night. I almost didn't answer. I almost rolled back over. I almost decided that a whispered phone call at 3 in the morning from a woman I barely knew was someone else's problem. And if I'd made any one of those small, ordinary choices, I don't know what I'd be telling you right now. Or whether I'd be telling you anything at all. That's the part that gets me. Not the drama of it, not the part with the sirens or the footsteps on the stairs. The part that stays with me is how close the whole thing came to going a completely different direction because of choices that seemed like nothing at the time. A habit I'd never built. A door I'd never thought to check. A call I nearly sent to voicemail. There's something I've come to understand about the way our small daily choices accumulate, not in a cosmic sense, not in any framework handed down to us, just in the plain, observable way that the things we do and don't do stack up quietly until one night they're the difference between safe and not safe. I hadn't locked the back door that night, not because I was careless exactly, because I'd never made it a habit, and habits don't form around things we assume will never matter. My neighbor made a different kind of choice that night. She was scared. She was running. She had about 30 seconds between realizing her husband had come back and getting herself out the door. In those 30 seconds, she thought of me. She didn't know if I'd pick up. She didn't know if it would help. She did it anyway because she decided that someone else's safety was worth the 10 seconds it cost her. That's not instinct. That's character. That's something she built in herself long before that night, in ways she probably never thought about as building anything. I think about her when I feel the pull to do the easy thing instead of the right one. To not say something because it might be awkward, to assume someone else will handle it, to let the moment pass because it seems small. Moments don't announce themselves as important while they're happening. That's the thing nobody tells you, the hinge points, the ones your whole story later turns on. They feel exactly like everything else while you're in them. And then there's what I did after. I went to the hardware store at 8 in the morning. I spent $240. I installed 4 things before noon. That part isn't heroic. That's just what you do when something shows you a gap you didn't know you had. You close it. Not because you're brave, but because you're paying attention now, because the numbness of assumption has been replaced with something clearer and more honest. That's what I want to leave you with. Not fear. Not the image of someone climbing through a back door in the dark. I want to leave you with the version of yourself that checks the door, the version that picks up the phone, the version that, when someone needs 11 seconds of courage from you, has those 11 seconds ready. You build that version slowly. You build it in the ordinary moments when nothing is on the line and nobody is watching, and it would be so easy to let it go. My neighbor built it. That night it mattered more than either of us will ever fully know. Go check your door.